So, we've just heard from the prophet Jeremiah, who God sent to a potter to learn some lessons. We at the moment here at St. Luke's are studying and looking at the life of the early church. And in it we see certain key figures: Peter, John, Paul, his conversion we've looked at, and the rest of the 11 disciples who became apostles, which means sent ones, after Judas had left them and died. That study of the early church, of the Acts of the Apostles, is teaching us God's normal for the church. Because at the beginning of everything and every work, there is a real priority that we see in Scripture at the beginning of the early days of everything, that everything is in order and the lessons that need to be taught and learnt are indeed demonstrated. We see this in the wilderness. We see this at the early church when some dramatic things happened to correct the church. In the Acts of the Apostles, we see the church growing really fast, messing up really badly, and we read in the rest of the New Testament pastoral letters which are letters to help correct bad behavior, provide answers to the questions that the church has had, corrections to the errors that were being made, particularly in people's mindset. It's like, with this attitude, then this is how you need to hold yourself for God to work. And then we see amazing miracles and wonderful stories of people breaking out of all kinds of problems and darkness and struggles. This Sunday, I was going to say this. So the book of Acts shows us what we could expect from God, how God works and what he does, and it can teach us to set our minds straight, and if you like. This Sunday, being designated Education Sunday, is a moment for us to reflect on a number of things. And the first and probably most important thing is that education is important to God. Being a disciple is primarily about being someone who learns. Jesus taught us to be interested in all people and their welfare, with a particular bias towards those on the edge, the poor, the hurting. And the reason for this is because Jesus lived out of his Father's concern for the lost and those in need. It says in Matthew, he came to seek, or to look for, and to save or rescue those who are lost. He says, those who are well don't need a doctor. And he was like a doctor coming to people who were sick. That's in Luke chapter 5. We are interested here, as a church, in the fulfillment of each individual person's potential. And this comes from our belief that we are not just the result of a lottery of chance, but there was an original intention, a plan, from which we have fallen, and which the coming of Jesus as God in a body was intended to reverse completely through his ultimate love demonstrated on the cross. He died for us so that everything that we do wrong is completely removed. Annulled is a word from it, but made nothing. It's like it has no power over us. This puts education of all and a passion to see everyone reach their potential as part of the long heritage of the church. We see Jesus at the heart of this plan, and he sent us to go into the world to tell the rest of the world and teach this message of this rescue. So we study the early church, how they organized themselves and their priorities. And it's interesting to look back in our own country. to how the church came here through the mission of, well, particularly in England, it was St. Augustine of Canterbury, a Benedictine monk. This is not to be confused with the guy, the Augustine in Hippo, who wrote various books and like the Confessions and the City of God and many other things. But this is Augustine of Canterbury, who came in 597, nearly 600 years after Jesus. And he came to this country, and in Canterbury he established a church and a school. And so there is a school there, which I in fact went to, which claims to have the longest history of the establishment of a school in this country, which goes back to 597, which is amazing. So the school and the church always went together. And so in the same way that we have the NHS now, and healthcare and care and compassion and generosity and charity was very largely, not exclusively, but very largely generated from the church. So education was generated by the church in the first instance. Free education given to young children has now been taken over by the state, for which we can be really glad, but because it just means that it's available for everybody. But let's see the origins of it. Of course, it was St. Patrick who went to Ireland, St. David went to Wales, and there was, among others, a monk called St. Columba who went from Ireland then on to Scotland. So the whole of the United Kingdom was touched by this message. The fact that we are connected to our village school through its foundation is really important to how I see who we are. And it's the same family, actually, that built this church, the Ironsons and the Whitakers, that built and gave the land for the school to be built upon. And it's a very important and special history. So Greyshot, so we here are part of this long history. So Greyshot Primary School is a church school, which means that it is supported and connected to the Diocese of Guildford with their experience and resources, and they take a really active interest in the progress of the school. And so we come to the reading, which is from Jeremiah, the potter and the clay. Now that reading was suggested by the team that sort of sponsors Education Sunday. Jeremiah is a prophet to Israel around about the time of the exile to Babylon, and God sends him to the potter for an object lesson. When at school, I spent some time learning how to throw pots, and I know that Richard over there every now and then goes to Greyshot Pottery, and others of you will have done it before yourselves, and you will know that what I'm about to say is just sharing some of what that's about. When doing so, I learned that all kinds of things can happen when a wheel is turning round with clay on it. But I want to draw out a few simple thoughts. Before you throw a pot, you need to be very clear in your mind about what you want to make. Is that right, Richard?
Yes,
it doesn't always come out. No, we're coming to that in a minute. But it's very good to have a strong sense of design. Yeah? So there's a vision. The potter prepares the clay. The potter is in charge and controls the wheel, but sometimes, as Richard's saying, the clay does not behave precisely as expected. Okay. Anybody who's tried it and is learning it will know this very well. The potter, and this is the story of this prophetic writing in Jeremiah, the potter can decide what to do with the clay, whatever happens. It's their skill. So the keys are that it's the skill of the potter, the quality and the yieldedness of the clay to the potter's hand that are important. So although this is a verse in the Old Testament, it teaches us something about God's nature and his mind in relating to Israel at the time, but also to his church and to us here in Greyshot today. God is the potter, we are the clay. Clay is a common substance. You can find it in the silt of a riverbed. You can find it in some areas in complete abundance, and it means that it's really difficult to grow things. But it's out there, it's in the ground. But the amazing thing, it's the earth that we stand on, but the amazing thing is that you can make some of the most beautiful objects in the world from this clay stuff. It's an amazing thing. You can make pots, you can make vessels of all kinds, it can carry liquid, you can cook in it, you can do amazing other things, and as I said, they can be beautiful things. So some of the most beautiful objects in the world are just made of this clay stuff. But you can also use it for the ordinary things as well. So this reading focuses on the fact that clay does not control or question the potter. Well, that's quite an important key from this. And yet these people that God was speaking to through Jeremiah were doing just that. They were questioning God. For the potter's vision to be realized, the preparation of the clay is a vital stage. And I want to talk about that just for a second. Even if you buy ready-made, prepared, wet clay, which is there is a process of preparation. And what you do is you take a wire in the lump and you slice it through. And what that wire is intended to do is to pick up any little bits of grit and pull it out. And then you sort of slap it together. But it also exposes any bubbles in it. So you knead and knead and knead. You slap it, you slice it, slice it, slice it, slice it. And you see where this is going. We need the clay to smooth it out and to make it an even consistency throughout. One lump or one bubble can ruin a pot, either in the throwing stage or in the firing stage. A bubble will expand in the firing stage and crack the pot. Right? Right. The preparation of the clay relates to us letting God work in us, to purify, extract flaws, to remove the bubbles, and to produce in the clay that even consistency. And in us, that refers to the same thing. It's about our character. It's about the quality of what goes on inside us. Are there bits of grit where we haven't allowed God to take out of us? Are there bubbles or empty spaces in us that need to be filled in and exposed? That's a really big question. Are we supple to the potter's hands to produce the fine work? So, yeah, those flaws relate to attitudes that are hard and unyielding, that drag through the clay as it spins in the master's hands and damages the pot. God can but also, we also learn something else, that God can take the flawed vessels that we are and make something beautiful. And there's something else which, I have to say, was brought to my attention by the literature that came for Education Sunday, and that's something called kintsugi, which is a Japanese technique for taking a broken pot and repairing it. And kintsugi means golden joinery. It's also known as kintsukoroi, golden repair. And it's a Japanese art of mending a break with precious metal, gold, sometimes platinum, maybe silver. And basically, there's some beautiful pictures online if you look for it. And these things become a complete vessel again, but with these threads of precious metal running through it. And it's just the most extraordinary and beautiful thing that we can see. So something that was broken before becomes even more beautiful. It's a very precious thing. And there's a song that we used to sing, and I just want to sing it for you unaccompanied and just allow you just to maybe shut your eyes or whatever you want to do in terms of responding. But it's a wonderful picture of how God takes hold of our lives. And it goes like this. Something beautiful, something good, all my confusion, he understood. All I had to offer him was brokenness and strife, and he made something beautiful out of my life. Something beautiful, something good. All my confusion, he understood. All I had to offer him was brokenness and strife, the broken pieces of something which had once been okay. And he made something beautiful out of my life.